My wife used me as an ATM for 2 years while hunting for something better, but when I confronted her in front of all our friends with evidence on a big screen, her perfect life collapsed, and they never saw my revenge coming. I'm 34 years old. I work as a mechanical engineer, and I honestly thought my marriage was solid until I heard my wife and her friends talking about how she was going to upgrade from me. You know, that moment when you're in your own house and suddenly you become a ghost who hears things you were never supposed to hear. But let me backtrack a bit because this story is long and I'm still struggling to process it, even though it's been like 8 months since everything exploded. I met Nicole 6 years ago at a mutual friend's party, and honestly, I thought I was lucky. Like I really believed I'd found someone special. She was fun, smart, we had chemistry, and after 2 years of dating, we got married. The first few years were good, or at least that's what I thought, but looking back, I guess I should have seen the signs. Nicole was working in marketing when we met, but after we got married, she started complaining constantly about work, about her boss, about her coworkers, about everything. Like a year and a half into the marriage, she quit and said she needed time to find herself, and I, like an idiot, told her that was fine, that she could take all the time she needed, because my salary was enough for both of us. And that's when it all started, though I didn't realize it at the time. Nicole stopped working, and I basically became her personal ATM. I was paying rent for our apartment, which wasn't cheap because we lived in a central area of the city, paying for her car, her insurance, the credit cards, food, everything. She said she was looking for work, that she was applying to different places, but months went by and nothing ever happened. She started going to the gym daily, having lunch with her friends like 3 or 4 times a week, constantly buying new clothes, and I was paying for all of that too because, I don't know, I guess I thought it was temporary, and that eventually she'd go back to work. The thing is, Nicole has this best friend, Vanessa, who's basically the devil in human form. Vanessa was always kind of weird with me, one of those people who greets you but you feel like they're evaluating you all the time. She's married to some guy who's a director of I don't know what company, and they have a huge house and 2 luxury cars, and I always noticed that after Nicole spent time with Vanessa, she'd come home in a bad mood or making comments about things we didn't have. Like, one day she came home and said, "Why can't we go on vacation to Europe like Vanessa and Mark?" And I'd explain that it was because Mark makes triple what I make and doesn't have student loans to pay, but she'd just say, "I didn't understand." So we get to the day that changed everything. It was a Saturday afternoon. I think it was October last year. And Nicole had Vanessa and another friend, I don't remember her name, over in our living room. I was in the bedroom working on my laptop because I had a project due Monday, and they were drinking wine and talking. The bedroom door was half open, and at one point I came out because I needed to go to the bathroom, and I heard them talking. Vanessa was saying something about some guy she met at Nicole's gym, who apparently was a lawyer and had a brand new Audi, and then I heard Nicole say, literal, her exact words, "With Michael I settled, but when I find something better, I'm definitely going to upgrade." I froze in the hallway. My hands started shaking, and I felt like someone had kicked me in the stomach. Her friend laughed and said something like, "Well, but Michael's a good guy." And Nicole responded, "Yeah, he's a good guy, but good guy doesn't pay the bills. I want paid. You know what I mean?" And they all laughed like it was the funniest joke in the world. I went back to the bedroom quietly and sat on the bed trying to process what I'd just heard. My mind was racing. I was thinking about all the times I'd worked overtime so we could have a better lifestyle. All the times I said yes when she wanted to go out to expensive restaurants, how I'd basically put my own hobbies and personal projects on hold to be able to finance her life without a job. And she was out there talking about upgrading from me like I was a used car. She was going to trade in for a newer model. That night, when Vanessa and the other one left, I confronted Nicole. I told her exactly what I'd heard, and she first went pale, then got angry, and finally told me I was overreacting, that it was just girl talk, that it didn't mean anything. Like, she literally said to me, "Oh, Michael, all women say those things with their friends. Don't be so sensitive." But I knew it wasn't normal. I knew there was something more there. I asked her directly if she was cheating on me or if she was looking for someone else, and she denied everything, told me I was being paranoid and dramatic. The next 2 months were weird. Nicole suddenly became super affectionate, like trying to compensate, I guess. She'd make me breakfast, send me messages during the day asking how I was, that kind of thing. And I wanted to believe her. I really did. So I tried to leave the incident behind and convince myself that maybe I'd misinterpreted the conversation, or that it really was just girls talking nonsense. But something in my head kept telling me to pay attention. And I was right to pay attention, because Nicole started doing strange things. Her phone, which she used to leave lying around anywhere, was now always with her, like she'd literally take it to the bathroom. She'd put her cell phone face down when we were watching TV, and if she got a message while I was nearby, she'd rush to check it and then put it away. She started going out more often, always with excuses that she was going to the gym or had to see a friend or had a job interview. But the interviews never resulted in anything, and the gym trips started lasting like 3 hours. One day, I think it was December already, my best friend Aaron called me and said he needed to talk to me. We agreed to meet for some beers, and when I got to the bar, I saw he had the look of something bad having happened. He asked me how things were going with Nicole, and I told him fine. Why? And he took a deep breath and said, "Look, man, I don't want to get involved where I shouldn't. But on Tuesday, I saw Nicole at that really expensive Italian restaurant downtown. You know, the one that costs like $200 per person, and she was with a guy. They weren't just two friends eating, Michael. They were very close together. She was laughing and touching his arm. And when they left, I saw the guy put his hand on her back. I felt like someone had thrown ice water on me. I asked Aaron if he was sure it was her, and he said completely sure, that he'd been about to go say hi, but then saw how they were acting and decided it was better not to. I left the bar about an hour later, feeling completely destroyed. I drove aimlessly around the city thinking about what I was going to do. I couldn't go home and confront her directly because I didn't have real proof. I only had what Aaron had told me and what I'd heard months before, so I started paying real attention. One night, Nicole went out supposedly to have dinner with her cousin Emma, and I waited like half an hour and then used the tracking app we had installed on our phones, one of those that couples install to know where the other is for safety. And I saw she wasn't anywhere near where Emma lives. She was at a hotel downtown. A hotel? Can you believe it? I felt like I was going to throw up, but I forced myself to stay calm and wait. 2 weeks later, Nicole asked to borrow my laptop to look at something while hers was updating, and I took the opportunity to check her laptop when she went to take a shower. And everything was there. I found profiles on like 3 different dating apps: Tinder, Bumble, one I didn't even know. The photos on the profiles were recent, like photos I'd taken of her in the last few months. I read the messages and she was basically talking to like 5 different guys at the same time, making plans to meet with them, telling them she was single, sending them provocative photos. But the worst, what really destroyed me, was that I found a folder in her Google Drive called New Life Planning. And inside, there was a document with a list of things she was looking for in her next partner. The list said things like, must earn at least $150K a year, must own his home, must be willing to let me not work, must have a nice car, must take me on international trips at least twice a year. And at the very bottom, there was a note that said, divorce M in spring. Wait until I have something secure before asking for divorce. Don't mention real reasons. I took screenshots of everything, emailed them to myself, and left the laptop as it was. When Nicole came out of the shower, I was in the living room watching TV like nothing had happened, but inside I felt like I was dying. That night I barely slept. I spent it awake, staring at the ceiling and thinking about how stupid I'd been, how I'd worked like a dog to support her while she was planning to replace me with someone with more money. The next day, I called a lawyer, Thomas, that a coworker had recommended. I explained the whole situation and showed him the screenshots. Thomas told me that technically Nicole wasn't physically cheating on me, or at least we didn't have proof of that, but that clearly she was looking to do so, and that the dating apps thing while still married could help me in the divorce. He recommended that I start preparing my exit strategically instead of confronting her immediately, and even though everything in me wanted to yell at her and kick her out of the house, I decided to follow his advice. The first thing I did was open a new bank account where I started depositing part of my salary. I reduced the amount I gave Nicole monthly to half, and when she asked why, I told her I'd had extra expenses at work and that things were tight that month. She got angry, obviously, but she couldn't say much because technically it wasn't her money. I also stopped doing all the extra things I did for her. Like if before I was the one who organized for people to come clean the house or fix something that broke, I simply stopped doing it. If she wanted those things done, she could organize them herself. About 2 months went by like this, with Nicole increasingly frustrated because I was no longer the helpful husband who paid for everything without complaint, and me increasingly cold with her because every time I saw her, I could only think about all those messages I'd read. And then, in early March, Nicole told me she'd organized a weekend at a lake house with 3 couples of friends, Rebecca and her husband, Melissa and hers, and Ryan with his girlfriend. She said it would be good for us to spend time with friends and relax a bit because things had been tense lately. I agreed to go, and this is where the story gets interesting because Thomas had given me an idea. He told me that if I was going to end this, I could do it in a way that Nicole would have no way of painting herself as the victim, and I wanted exactly that. I didn't want her to be able to go to our friends and family afterwards saying I was the bad guy, that I'd left her out of nowhere, that I was a terrible husband. I wanted everyone to know exactly what kind of person she was. I prepared a USB with all the screenshots of her profiles on the dating apps, the messages with the guys, the new life planning document, everything. I also asked Thomas to prepare the divorce papers and brought them with me in my suitcase. Friday afternoon, we drove the 2 hours to the lake house, which belonged to Rebecca's parents, and we arrived along with the other couples. The house was nice. It had a dock and was surrounded by trees, very peaceful and away from everything. That night, we all had dinner together, drank wine, played board games, and Nicole was happy because she loved that kind of social gathering. I acted normal, talked to everyone, laughed, acted like everything was perfect, but inside I was counting the hours until the next day. Saturday afternoon, after we all had lunch and were relaxing in the living room, I told the group I wanted to show them some photos from a trip Nicole and I had planned. I connected my laptop to the TV in the living room, and everyone turned to look at the screen. Nicole was sitting on the couch on the other side of the room, smiling, having no idea what was about to happen. And then I started showing the screenshots. The first was her Tinder profile, with photos I'd taken of her on our anniversary last year, where it said she was single and looking for someone with ambitions and financial success. I heard someone gasp. I think it was Melissa. The next screenshot was messages with a guy where Nicole said her husband was a loser who barely made enough to live on, and that she was looking for something better. Then more profiles, more messages where she was planning to meet guys at hotels, provocative photos she'd sent them. Nicole screamed my name and jumped up trying to get to the laptop. But Ben, Melissa's husband, got between her and me, like blocking her. She was screaming for me to stop, that this was private, that I had no right. I put the new life planning document on the screen and left it there for everyone to read well. The room was in complete silence, except for Nicole crying and yelling at me. When I finished, I closed the laptop and took the divorce papers out of my backpack. I walked over to where Nicole was, who was now sitting on the floor crying with her hands on her face, and put the papers in front of her. I told her, calmly without yelling, "These are the divorce papers. They're already signed by me. They just need your signature. You have 30 days to respond. Consider this weekend. My parting gift, the house is paid for until Sunday so you can stay. I'm leaving now." Nobody said anything. Rebecca had tears in her eyes and was looking at me with an expression between shock and pity. Melissa was hugging her husband, not knowing what to do. Ryan was looking at Nicole with a face of disgust that honestly made me feel a little vindicated. I grabbed my suitcase, which I already had ready in the room where we'd slept, and left the house. The drive back to the city was strange. I felt empty, I guess. Not exactly happy, but not sad either. Just empty. Like when you finish a task you've had pending for a long time and you don't know what to do with the free time you now have. Nicole called me like 50 times during the drive, but I didn't answer any calls. She sent me messages saying I was a monster. How dare I humiliate her like that I'd ruined her life, that all our friends hated her now. And she was right about that last part. Most of our friends cut her off. Completely. Rebecca called me 2 days later to apologize for not believing me. When, months earlier, I'd casually mentioned that Nicole and I were having problems. Melissa sent me a long message saying she'd always thought Nicole was kind of fake, but never imagined she was such a bad person. Vanessa, obviously, stayed friends with Nicole and started sending messages in the mutual friend group we had, saying I'd taken everything out of context and that Nicole had never done anything wrong, but nobody believed her. What did surprise me was Nicole's family's reaction. Her mom called me crying to apologize for her daughter's behavior and told me she'd raised her better than that. Nicole's dad, who'd always been kind of serious with me but never mean, sent me a message that said, "I'm sorry, Michael. I thought my daughter had more class." Even her sister Kay, who'd always been very close to Nicole, wrote to me to say she was embarrassed by what her sister had done and that I deserved better. Nicole tried to contact me directly, like a week after the incident at the lake house. She sent me a message saying she needed to talk, that we could work things out, that she was willing to go to couples therapy, and that the dating apps thing was just a fantasy she never planned to actually do. I responded only once and told her to sign the papers and leave me alone, that there was nothing to talk about. She wrote that she had nowhere to go because I'd stopped paying rent on the apartment, and it was true. I'd given notice I was leaving and found a smaller apartment just for me. In the end, Nicole went to live with her cousin Emma, the same one she'd supposedly been having dinner with that night when she was actually at a hotel. Emma was also angry with her for having used her as an excuse, so she let her stay there but with strict rules like she had to get a job and help with expenses. The divorce process took like 4 months because Nicole at first didn't want to sign anything and her lawyer tried to fight for me to give her alimony. But Thomas had all the evidence that she'd been planning to leave me and that she'd basically been using my money while looking to replace me. So in the end, she signed everything without fighting much. The divorce was finalized in July. Now it's August. I live alone in an apartment that's smaller but that I like better because it's mine and I don't have to share it with someone who saw me as an ATM. I have hobbies again. I'm going to the gym regularly, like actually to the gym, not as an excuse to go see other guys, and honestly I feel better. The other day at the gym, I met a girl who works in graphic design. We started chatting and agreed to get coffee next week. I don't know if it'll turn into anything, but I like that I can meet new people without feeling like I have this weight on me. Like 2 weeks ago, I ran into Vanessa at the supermarket and she saw me and turned the other way trying to avoid me, but I didn't say anything to her anyway. According to what I know from Rebecca, Nicole got a job at an advertising agency, but makes like half of what she made before marrying me, and she's living with 2 roommates in an apartment in an area that's not very nice. Part of me feels sorry for her, but another part, the bigger part, thinks she brought it on herself. My mom, who lives in another state, called me last week to see how I was, and I told her everything that had happened. She told me she was proud of how I'd handled the situation, that I could have been ugly and vindictive in other ways, but what I did was show the truth without exaggerating anything. And I guess she's right. I only showed exactly what Nicole had done. I didn't make anything up or make it look worse than it was. Do I regret how I did it? Exposing her like that in front of all our friends? No. Honestly, I don't regret it. Maybe it was harsh, but she'd spent months planning how to leave me in the most convenient way for her, using my money all. That time while emotionally cheating on me, if not physically too. I feel like if I'd just given her the papers in private, she would have found a way to paint the story like I was the bad guy, like I'd left her out of nowhere for selfish reasons. Now everyone knows the truth, and she has to live with the consequences of her actions. Sometimes I still wonder if there were signs I should have seen earlier. If I was naive to trust her for so long. But my therapist, I started therapy like 3 months ago, tells me it's not my fault for having trusted my wife, and that the problem wasn't my trust but her betrayal. I guess she's right. I'm trying not to become bitter with this whole experience, not to let it make me distrust all women or think they're all like that, because I know it's not true. Monday, I have that coffee date with the girl from the gym. Her name's Andrea. I'm going without expectations, just to get to know her and see what's up. And that's enough for now.